Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is The Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
Growing up in the church culture, I remember we called it outreach. We're reaching out. We're in competition with Satan. Satan controls the rest of the world. He's out there. He's got the money. He's got the influence. You know, he's got the movie stars. He has all of these resources. We have to do whatever it takes for the children. And we were part of program after program after program to bring them in. We were fishers of men. We were reeling them in, man. We didn't see it as advertising ourselves or marketing ourselves. We told ourselves, and I think to a degree we believed it, that, well, they don't have to be involved in our church. We just want them saved. We just want them involved in the church. Now, we really did want them to come and participate and join with us. Every church wants to. They say a church is either growing or dying. It's never neutral. That's a common theme in business as well. You're not really neutral. You're either growing or you're not. Well, they really feel that in the church. So an increased membership, more people coming in, more participation. Well, that means you're growing. You're doing something right. That's the fruit, the evidence. Churches are amazing these days at tactics and strategies to bring people in. We see it everywhere. Using mass mailers. We get these custom printed door hangers. You just come home and they're sitting on the doorknob. Come join us this Sunday. Be a part of our family. Come visit. Free coffee, whatever. Many churches have Bring a Friend Day or Fill a Pew Day or something they call FRAND. It stands for Friend, Relative, Associate, or Neighbor. Many churches will adopt a highway, partially because they want to do some good and adopt a highway. For those who don't know what that is, you essentially adopt a mile of road, either a city road or a rural highway, and you are then charged with keeping it litter-free. You take your team or family or whoever out, and you have to pick it up and maintain it. And you get to take some pride, and then they put a sign on the road that says, Adopt a Highway, this mile brought to you by Church X or Business X or whoever. They take those little temporary road signs. They stick them in the grass right there on the intersections. Free Easter candy. Join us this Sunday. Halloween alternative. Wear your costume. A Christmas cantata with live animals. A full stage presentation. A concert. A pizza party. You know what a lock-in is? A lock-in is something they do for young people, for teenagers. It's essentially an all-night party. You go to a church function, and it starts at, I don't know, when I was a kid, it was around 8 o'clock. Your parents would drop you off. And they had a whole night. This is back before I needed sleep, by the way. Now it's 8:30, and I'm like, good night. But back then, I was actually able to stay awake. And they would parents take their kids, and you have to sign the waiver. And they essentially don't let the young people leave. It's a secure thing. And all night long, it's nothing but pizza and pop and snacks and games and concert. And one church brought in this comedian. He came in and did like 90 minutes on stage in the middle of the night. Some would put you on buses and you would go to these places. These weren't necessarily all night. This might be an all day thing. You'd go out to the pizza place and then you would go bowling. And then you would go here, and then you would go to a movie. Rated G. They actually had rated G films back then. I don't know. I don't see many of them these days outside of the occasional animated flick. Back then, Disney films were largely rated G. G is for good people. G is for godly. And we would go and we would do these activities. And they would say, bring your friends, bring your unchurched friends, bring your unsaved friends and relatives. What a great opportunity this is. This could be their first impression to what church is like. No, it's not going to be the stuffies sitting in a pew and getting force-fed, boring information from a book they don't know about or care about. This is going to be fun. This is our way of kind of setting the hook. And they'll come and they'll make friends and they'll laugh and they'll enjoy free food. And we'll play games and we'll watch movies and we'll have all these wonderful memories. And then it'll be easier to bring them back the following Sunday. And maybe the Sunday after that. Maybe they'll bring their parents. Maybe they'll bring their friends. Maybe their siblings. Whoever. It was all about setting the hook. How do we get people on the hook and keep them? We are fishers of men. That's what we're talking about during this show. The marketing of religion. We're going to start with a gentleman who probably needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. The first graduate of the Clergy Project. He's also the executive director of Recovering from Religion and a friend, Jerry DeWitt. And you guys have had some crazy news coverage this week. NPR, CNN, USA Today. I mean, it's just been incredible.
It has been absolutely fantastic. The atheist community has really rallied around the ex-clergy. And they're obviously very thrilled to see this type of move taking place. And we're thrilled to just feel the love. It's been beautiful. It really has. We've been talking a little bit about how the church attempts to reach out and bring people into the fold. I'm in Oklahoma. There's a church on every half block, right? And I understand the need to want to bring people in, to want to attract other people. I mean, they're operating from a genuine desire to reach people, to convert souls. And so they, in their mind, are doing whatever it takes. So I'm driving down the street, and they're promoting their Easter services, and there's a series of small billboards that are stuck on the road, including face painting and carnival games, inflatable rides, and a helicopter candy drop. They flew a helicopter in and dropped candy from overhead. And it reemphasized again how the church is really continuously on a marketing campaign to bring other people in. And you've seen this firsthand, have you not? I have seen it firsthand. I will say, not just trying to, give myself any credit or to bail myself out or to make hay with anyone, but I'm glad to say I haven't been involved in probably anything more than selling barbecue plates or selling peanut brittle. That's probably about as far as the marketing. So you guys did the bake sales in the some communities. Well, I'm amazed. I've seen them give away cars. Like what? They pass the plate and you put in your name and number into a drawing? Yes, or? Exactly. That's exactly right. I'm telling you, these mega churches, they pull the most amazing stunts. But yes, one church actually had, it was actually a really, really nice sports car, and they had taken up the money, and I don't even know how they raised the money to buy the car, but it was basically for every person that you brought to church, you got a ticket, and they drew tickets, and the winning ticket is the one that got the car. I had there was a mega church in Dallas, Texas, and they would have these huge, very inventive sermon series where there was a different gimmick every Sunday. One gimmick was that they drove this hot car onto the church stage. They reinforced the stage and brought it in. And it's a show. It's not just come here and connect and learn and be discipled, but it was experience the hot lights, the smoke, concert quality sound. I mean, these people are operating with multi-million-dollar media. This is strictly my point of view, and I'm just one Southern fried Pentecostal, ex-preacher from the South. So I'm not a theologian. I'm not a marketing genius by any means, but I've lived this for 42 years and been in it for 25 as a professional. And here's what I think is going on. every church is in direct competition with every other church. And so it all comes down to who can put on the best show, who can market the best services. And when I say services, I don't mean from 10 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock. I mean who can offer the most services to their customers, which are the people who sit on the pews and give in the plates. And so it is exactly marketing. It is commercialism to its extreme. And there's no way you will ever convince me that even if there was an Apostle Paul, if you could bring him to the 21st century, Paul would say, "What are you doing?" There's no way that this looks anything like the Christianity of the past.
You and I see the church from the inside out, and I know many would say right off the top, it's all about the offering plate. The reason they want more people in the front doors, on the pews or chairs or stadium seats these days, whatever they happen to be using, whatever their venue is, the reason they want them in is because they simply want to pass the plate. They want 10% of your income. But I personally, having seen churches operate from the inside out, have seen the vast majority that I can tell, they genuinely believe this is the right thing to do. We're in competition with the devil. He's out there with all the expensive toys, right? The devil's got Hollywood. He's got television. He's got the media. He's got all these things. So we got to step it up to compete. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. And I'm glad you brought that up because since we do come from the inside, we know that, yes, there are some preachers that live in some big houses. And the mega preachers and the televangelists, those are a different level and not necessarily what we're even talking about. Those ministers will never be paid for everything that they do, because they're on call 24/7. And most of the people doing the work, most of the volunteers, they're not getting paid anything. So it's not about the money any further than the money has to be there to do certain things. It is definitely about growing the church, and their motivation can be everything from what you said, which is we're fighting against the devil. How are we going to save our kids? The kids are going to these concerts, so we need to turn our services into concerts to attract them. There's no doubt whatsoever that these people are giving their blood, sweat, and tears for what they believe to be a good cause. No doubt about it.
If we're talking about kids now, it's a very sensitive thing. The vast majority of people who accept Jesus Christ as their personal Savior will do so before they reach adulthood, and churches know this. Did you see a concentrated effort to go after the kids when you were involved?
Absolutely. Every church does it. Every church makes sure that they have Christmas plays and Easter plays and recitals and everything that they can generate that can not only draw kids but also use the kids to draw the rest of the family. But you're going to have fun days, and you're going to have, those blow-up jumps, and you're going to have everything that you can to try to attract the attention of the children. Now, here's the deal, okay? If these people truly believe that the unsaved are going to burn in hell forever and ever and ever, then they need to be doing something. They need to be trying to save children if that's what they believe.
It's a difficult thing when you realize that often the heart behind the action, they operate with a sincere desire to do the right thing. To speak out against it often sort of paints us as the bad guy, right? Hey, how could you have a church event targeted to children? Well, who would speak out against that? But if you know the end zone is to teach them the fantasy of hell and to teach them to fear hell and anticipate heaven, well, we have no choice. We have to come out and say, yeah, the kids are having a great time. They're coloring in their books and they're playing video games in the youth room, and they've got indoor cage basketball, and they're not on the street doing heroin. All that is well and good, but we have to address the larger umbrella over all of this, which is the reason they're bringing them in is to plant the seeds of indoctrination.
That's exactly right. And that's the reason we do speak out against it. Whenever we were in the church world, when the subject about doing good and whether or not a person had to accept Jesus Christ as their Savior, and you would always have to vacillate over this idea of, well, does a person really go to hell if they don't say the sinner's prayer? And so the conversation would eventually work around to, well, what about a person who is sincere? Anybody who stands their ground on their Christian doctrine is going to say, well, yes, they're sincere, but they're sincerely wrong. Now, That's what we're saying. We're saying we know you're sincere, and we know you're trying to save our children, and we know you don't want them to go to hell, but we see it as the mythology that it is. We see the destruction that it does in their lives, emotionally and sometimes physically, and we say to you, you're sincere, but you're sincerely wrong.
Sometimes the greatest damage done is done with the very best of intentions.
Certainly.
I take a lot of heat because I tend to be a little easy, to be soft sometimes. I go after the dogma and the doctrine, but when it comes to Christians, my life is populated with believers, and they are not the stereotypes that I see posited online by many in the atheist community. You know, we tend to vilify people that we either don't understand or who disagree with us, but I'm so desperate to try to remind everyone that they're human beings, probably indoctrinated by their own environment and culture. Their parents probably taught them to teach what they're teaching to their kid, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's not that they're bad people. They're operating from the best of intention. We really have to go after the larger picture.
Yes.
Do people say, oh, you're too easy on the religious because you come from that, or did you develop a harder edge when you got out?
No, I think you're doing exactly right. I think you're saying what needs to be said. You know, I wanted when I first came out, I wanted to always refer to myself as a humanist because I felt like it spoke towards my motivation, that I love human beings. And I think the majority of people in religion love human beings. We just have a disagreement about what the end result is going to be of their teaching. But because of this issue you're talking about of getting criticism for being too soft, I've had to emphasize the atheist part because I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm doing, because I still got a lot of this Southern Pentecostal preacher in me, you know, and I don't want them to think, oh, well, he's really still a Christian or he's really still a believer. So I say atheist a lot, but it really is about human motivation. The human motivation is about humanism. And that's why we're speaking out against the dogma. That's why we're speaking out against the doctrine. And that's why we're saying, yeah, we hate the beliefs, but we do try to love the believer. So,
it's a hard thing to do. When you see him bring in the cartoon character mascot, the Bible character mascot, and to show them the cartoons, the Christian cartoons, and to bring in the toys and the games and the prizes and the video games and all the fun stuff to engage children. I believe in my heart this is absolutely wrong, and it has to be rectified. But I want, in no way does that translate into these people are taking pleasure in destroying children. They honestly think we have to do this because hell and heaven are in the balance, and that's the difference.
Yes, that is the difference. And you know, referring back to Dr. Del Rey and the God virus, you know, using that analogy of the infection, that religious virus, that religious infection, you know, there's so many times in our lives that we get involved in something and it literally causes us to not think all the way through, okay? When I first got involved in Christianity, obviously I was raised in it, brought up around it, but it really didn't become real to me until I was 17 and got saved at Jimmy Swaggart's church. When I first got involved in that, seeing little children come down to the altar and pray, I was just as deluded as everyone else. And I thought, this is a great thing because they're now going to go to heaven forever and ever. They're going to be empowered by the Holy Spirit. They're never going to have drugs. They're never going to be alcoholics. They're never going to fall into sin. Their life is going to be great from here on out. So seeing that child in distress down at the altar, I was as deluded as everyone else and saw it as a good thing. Well, obviously, when you begin to wake up out of that delusion, when you begin to, you know, the mist of the mythology begins to dissipate, all of a sudden you're like, oh, no, look at the mental abuse that's happening to that child. But I have to, before I run up there and, you know, and punch the preacher in the face over it, I have to remember what it was like when I was on that side of the pulpit and find a way to stop him, find a way to discourage the growth of those doctrines, but do it in a way of understanding because I was there too.
Talking here with Jerry DeWitt, it's like you're reading my book. Well, I remember when they would bring children down, right? They had to be at the age of accountability, which was normally 5 or 6 or whatever. And they would come down and they would have said the salvation prayer. I felt this swell of joy. Another one has been snatched from the hands of the evil one. He's going to go to heaven. His whole life will be transformed. And I felt this buoyant, positive feeling wash over me, like, whew, wow, he was totally rescued. And now, from the other side of the looking glass, I see it totally differently. When I was in Christian radio, Jerry, we used to do live broadcasts at these Christian book and music stores. We'd go out there and do 2 or 3 hours live. We'd have the van out front, and we'd do cutaways and call-ins to the radio station. And we spent a lot of time at these Christian retail places. Well, I was buying a couple of props for a video I'm working on, and the only place that had what I needed was the local Christian book and supply store. So I went in last week. And I'll tell you, the first time I've been into one since I rejected my faith, it's been years and years and years, I felt like I was seeing the store and the merchandising of religion for the first time.
Yes.
And I thought, how did I miss this the first time around? The $149 Jesus oil painting. And the myriad of crucifixes on the wall and different varieties and styles and metal and wood and stained glass and all the different books and monograms and action figures and the little testaments with scriptures on every mint. I thought, I'm in the temple with the money changers.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. If you can indulge me for about 30 seconds,
go ahead.
I'd like to introduce an idea to you, and maybe it's out there. Everybody knows I've only been out for 6 months. So I'm young and naive, so if I'm plagiarizing, it's definitely not on purpose. So please forgive me. But here's the deal. What I'm proposing is, in Richard Dawkins' book, The Magic of Reality, has this beautiful story he tells about how scientists decide what is a new species. And he talks about getting in a time machine and going back far enough, and if you go far enough back, yes, you can breed with the Homo sapien of that time, so that's the same species as you. But if you go further back, you can't breed, and you draw a line and say that's a different species. I would say that there is now a new God in America, that he is no longer the same species that he was 100 years ago, and definitely not the same 2,000 years ago. And at the bar, I was talking to Sarah Moorhead about this subject, trying to figure out a name for this God, and she cleverly said Amera-God, because it's about this westernized version of Yahweh, of Jehovah, that is now a total different species than what has been experienced in the past. And it comes all together into commercialism. It comes together into politics. So now you worship Amera-God through commercialism. You worship Amera-God through being active in your politics. Now Amera-God actually has his own set of disciples, and it's the misrepresented stories of the founding fathers. There's all these other new things about Amera-God that has to be totally different than what John Calvin or Martin Luther or anyone else experienced in their devotion to their God of the Bible.
Jerry DeWitt, when I hear you articulate your perspective and you do it so well, I find myself smiling. I'm just smiling. You ex-preachers sure can spin a yarn from the stage. It's amazing. I love the work you're doing, and I am, every time I see a headline that features you or anyone from the Clergy Project or any of the ex-clergy who have come together to take that brave stand, trust me, I have my pom-poms in the air. I'm cheering you guys on 100%.
Well, thank you. Every time you see a headline, you just remember that you gave us a break very, very early on, and you got us some national attention that we would have not gotten otherwise. So the credit goes to you, my friend.
Well, you're very kind. Give us the website. Everyone's got clergyproject.org, but the other website is what?
Is recoveringfromreligion.org. And real quick, they need to dig around on that website, because they're going to find we've got more services, such as the Therapist Project. And we will also be raising funds for the Clergy Project with our own program called the Clergy Professionals Relief Fund, CPR.
Now, I heard Daryl mention the Therapist Project. Can you give me the Reader's Digest version? What is it?
Yeah, the Reader's Digest version is people all the time come to us and they say, what can I do? And we say, you need to get professional help. And they say, I tried that, and the person tried to get me back to the Lord. And so what the Therapist Project does is it registers therapists across the United States and eventually throughout the world who commit to using only secular practices with the people that we recommend to them.
So you go to a therapist and their solution is faith-based, and that's not what you paid your good money for.
That's exactly right.
You guys are going to try to weed out the ones who have an agenda, a religious agenda behind the degree.
That's exactly right. They come to us and they have to make the commitment. And we've got some great people. Of course, you've got Dr. Del Rey. They're able to vet these therapists and make sure that they're truly safe. And unfortunately, the reason we make it sound like the Clergy Project, but it's the Therapist Project, is because in a lot of communities, even the therapists themselves can't come out openly as being a non-believer. This Amera-God religion is really strong, but I think we're turning the tide.
Jerry DeWitt, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.
I actually have it right here, the prop. I'm working on a video that should release in a day or two. I'm not going to tell you anything about it except we shot it in my garage. I didn't have a place to really build a set for this particular video, so we shot it in my garage. Needed a couple of props, including a Jesus action figure. So I go into this place, and I still have the Jesus action figure, and I kid you not, it speaks. Press the button on the... He must be about 10 inches tall. He is fully posable. He has that uber peaceful deity type look on his face. He's not really smiling, not really frowning. He's just kind of got that I know everything, I am everything look on his face. You know the look. He can move his legs, and he's got this floor-length robe. And if you push the button on his back, he does this.
John 3:16. God loved the world so much that he sent his only Son to pay for sin, so that whoever believes in him may not be punished, but have everlasting life.
I can't throw it away. I got to do something with this thing. I got to do that shirt.
Mark 12:30.
Oh, another one, yeah.
Love God with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all of your mind,
do it,
and with
baby.
all of your strength.
One more.
Mark 12:31. Love others as much as you love yourself.
He's going. Oops, shut up. Shut up.
I am Jesus.
Shut up. Shut it.
Jesus.
Shut it. Hang on. Well, he's got those little, those tiny little jewelry batteries in him. So with it, and they're screwed in. You can't shut Jesus up.
God. I want to tell you a very special story about a day that I spent sitting on the side of a mountain, teaching and helping many people. There were so many people there that day with me. And when it started to get late, I knew that the people must be hungry.
I can't take it.
I wanted to feed everyone.
Can't take
but
it.
I didn't have any money. There was a young boy nearby.
Never mind. He's going away. Say goodbye to Jesus, everybody. Oh, now the dog's sniffing it. Keep away from the button. Keep away from the button. And obviously they're going after kids, right? It's in the children's department. They're going to buy a little Jesus. They're going to go over, and whenever they need some inspiration, they're just going to pop that little button on the Savior. Get some wisdom. You want to know how serious churches are about marketing themselves? Even how you are greeted at the lobby door is something that many churches practice. Many churches will actually have what they call a greet ministry or a welcome ministry. What to wear, how to hold your shoulders, eye contact, the tempo and tenor of your voice, how to do a proper handshake, the type of words you should use when greeting someone to make them feel welcome, to keep them from feeling overwhelmed or intimidated. Body language, where to guide them first, where to seat them, how to be there when the service is over, to give them information, remembering names. There was one series of instructions that actually taught their greet ministry what to do on subsequent visits. They ask questions. After the first visit from a new person, after the worship, you find them and you say, how was it? Did you enjoy yourself? And then you hopefully will get an address. They'll fill out a welcome card with all their information, including phone and email. And then there's a doorstep visit. Ding dong. Hi, this is Timmy from First Church of the What's Happening Now. We just wanted to say how much we enjoyed having you at our service the other day and wanted to know if there's anything we can do for you. And we wanted to invite you back. We've got a very special message coming up on Sunday, and it's about finances. And we know everybody in this economy is struggling with their money. And we want you to know that God has a financial solution for you. And we want you to bring the kids. There's going to be free coffee for you, and the kids are going to have treats and snacks. And there's a great children's service, and they play games. And yeah, we just want to know if you'll come join us again. We would just love to have you. Okay? Maybe a phone call from the pastor if it's a smaller church and they can manage it. Now you're on the email newsletter, even the snail mail newsletter list. Now you're getting mail from the church. These are the activities for the month of May or June or July, whatever. Make sure you call them after their second visit within 36 hours, according to the instructions. A member of the staff doesn't have to be the pastor. A letter handwritten from a lay leader or Sunday school teacher. Third visit, maybe a home visit by pastor. It's very strategic because they honestly want to bring people in. You can tell how they go after young people by these supposedly catchy names they give their youth and children's ministry. Stuff like Pulse or C2J, Committed to Jesus. Ablaze, Salt, as in salt of the earth, you know. Halo, Nitro, High Voltage, Aftershock. Tonight at Aftershock, the kids are going to love it. We're going to have free pizza and live music by so-and-so. Join us this Wednesday night for Wildfire, kids. It's going to be awesome. Or SWAT, Spiritual Warfare Attack Team. DV8, the initials, DV, the number 8. DV8, because we don't do it like the world does it. Teen Impact, TFC, Teens for Christ, The Edge, Extreme. Anybody who has participated in a church youth group in the last 15 years is probably nodding right now because you know exactly what I'm talking about. We got to be edgy. We got to be accessible. We got to be the kind of place that everybody wants to be. I don't blame them for that, but it's important to see that they're using tactics of marketing to bring people in to implement a higher agenda, which is to teach you shit that is not real. It's a problem. Anna sent me an email. She said, I was raised from birth in an evangelistic Protestant home. I started teaching kids about the Bible when I was 12, when I myself should have been in Sunday school. I graduated high school at 16. I was sent to an internship called 220I. I was a leader in a church ever since I could remember. At this internship, we were taught about the Bible 6 days a week. And when we were taught about another religion, or even, God forbid, atheism, it was taught in a mean, cruel, even mocking way, as if their belief was any less ridiculous. This church is a mega church. Bethany World Prayer Center in Louisiana. Yeah, they're freaking huge. I think, isn't Bethany the one with the 3 huge crosses right off the highway? I mean, there's like a 200-foot cross in the center and 250-foot crosses on each side right off the freaking highway. I think that's Bethany. Anyway, back to the letter. She said, through the year that I worked there, I was in charge of a lot of the stage designs, and I helped with a lot of advertisements for sermons and services. I always found it odd when making a slideshow or video for a sermon on tithing and offerings and giving everything you had to God, when literally all of it was just going to the church to pay for the electronics used to make these advertisements for the Bible. Always preaching the sin of loving money and not being of this world, yet using modern advertising to get people in the church to essentially sign their checks, saying it's for souls and we need to get the attention of the lost. From decorated flyers and posters to movies and full-on theatrics for the holidays, so much money is taken from innocent, gullible, and sometimes very poor people to keep these churches sophisticated. Someone has to pay for all of it. And it sure isn't the pastors and the missionaries. Thank you so much for the letter. Our first call of the show, area code 347. Thanks for your patience on hold. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who is this?
This is Caesar. How's it going, Seth?
Glad you called, Caesar. What do you have for us today?
Well, I'm calling from New York. I'm the very same caller that shared way too much of his life last call. And, well, I used to belong to an American church here. My last church was an American church. And I was quite impressed when I moved into it because I was used to small church, like 50, 60 members. And then I got into that church with my wife, and we had like a couple hundred members, folks greeting us at the door, giving us candy, and like, hi guys, how are you today? The ever smiling, like, type. Everybody was always in a good mood. On our first visit, they gave us books, and they were like, oh, we are so happy, to have you here. Fill up this card, gives us your information, and they were sending us letters, metro cards, actually, to go back to the church. It's like, yeah, your journey is on us. And they would, I wasn't used to the church taking credit cards, and I became aware that now church, like not now, but for a while, they do automatic debit in your account for tithing and offerings. I was like, wow, is it really like that? And
I'm aware of a church that actually had ATM machines installed in their lobby so that during the service, during a moment of leading of the Spirit, which means your emotions are heightened and you're being promised a blessing, you can rush out to the lobby and swipe your Visa or ATM or whatever it is, and you can then immediately have the cash, which belongs to God anyway. According to the scriptures, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So you're essentially just being obedient and giving money back to God and then allowing him to open the doors of blessings in your life. I don't blame them for giving you the full court press, for wanting you to come back, for wanting you to like them. And honestly, I've been to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Sunday morning services. Those people are genuinely glad to be there. They're genuinely glad you're there. But for you, did it turn you off, or did it make you want to go back?
Yeah, because then I started to work at the church, okay? And I could see the behind the scenes. And it was quite scary because some of those higher position, folks that were handling the whole organization, the whole setup of the church, they were kind of like not that smiley and not that happy guys. They were really business oriented. It was just like a network marketing, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And it's like, you got to bring your friends. The first impression at the door is the most important, so they will come back. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. It's like, is this a business here? And then I noticed also that the word, they would never preach anything that would be scary. Nothing related to homosexuals, nothing related to special types of sin like sex outside marriage. They wouldn't be very, very, the message was always, God is good. God's going to help you. God's going to increase your salary. God has promises, and God's going to make wonders. And it was always a positive message, but they would never give the hardcore word, because it's all about business. They would have, they would have the CDs. You could get free CDs with those special hardcore messages to listen at home at your car. And not only that, they would have a special CD that you could actually contact the pastor and stuff for his financial advice. And I was like, whoa, interesting. They will get into your accounts.
In my mind, it sounds a little bit like, I don't know how much you know about Joel Osteen's church in Houston, Texas, but they're in the Astrodome, they're in this huge, but it's happy, positive. Occasionally they'll throw in something that might grieve your spirit, but by and large it is therapy. You go and you are made to feel like God is in control. Just surrender to him. Caesar, thanks for the call and for your perspective. Good stuff. I sure appreciate you, man.
Thank you very much. You have a very good evening. You're the best.
Thank you. Caesar touched on something. What they call that is they call it a seeker church or seeker-friendly church. And many pastors will proudly say, we're not going to dance around the scripture around here. We're going to preach the word, even if it makes people uncomfortable. To their credit, they're preaching what they believe is the truth of scripture. And they'll talk about the fact that God is against homosexuality, and God is about premarital sex, and God is about this, and God wants you to do that. And they'll preach the hard stuff, and they take a lot of pride in it. But a lot of churches take what they call a seeker-friendly approach. You are now out there somewhere. You're not a church member. Maybe you visited once or twice, but you haven't really hooked on. You haven't really connected. You are a seeker. So what happens is that you're looking for a place where you can connect and feel like you belong. You're looking for a place you can call home. You want a place that you're probably, let's say you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you're raising kids, right? Once you become a parent, now you're thinking, I really need to be a good parent to my children. It's important for me to make sure that they are in a church home. They're not really even going as much for themselves. They're looking for a place for their kids. I need a place where I can go and feel like I'm part of something and not feel threatened or intimidated. I need a seeker-friendly church. And so they go in the door and they get to sing songs and they get to hear about how they are loved and adored and cherished and destined for an eternal bliss in the sky. And this feels wonderful. And I was hugged the first thing in the door. And look, they had free coffee and they've got pizza for the kids. And they're going to do a concert on Wednesday night. And it's free. And it's going to, you know what? I'm coming back next Sunday. I just had the best possible time. That's a seeker church. They avoid most of the hard stuff. They won't tell you that, but they do. They avoid the harder scriptures and teach the happy, fluffy stuff so that you can come in and then feel like you belong and you can leave with the warm fuzzies that you were hoping to get from church. 810, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Thanks for waiting. Who's this?
This is Kelly Thompson from Michigan, and I'm here with my son Christian, who made the video for you.
Let me back up for everybody. I met Kelly in D.C. at the Reason Rally. It was actually after. You were there at the hotel where the American Atheist Convention was being held. And you rolled phone video and you said you and your son listened to the podcast and you asked me to say a greeting on the video. So I'm there talking to your phone. Hey, Christian, what's going on? Thanks for listening. And I guess we made an impression. Christian, it's nice to finally meet you in person, man.
You as well.
What do you have for me, Kelly?
Well, we're here together on speaker. Can you hear us okay?
I sure can. You got to tell me who's speaking because you both have these deep, authoritative, manly voices. Right. And so tell me who I'm listening to.
All right. Well, let me set this up, and I'm going to let Christian explain it, okay? The church that we all used to go to, actually, and he still goes to with his mom, is every other week. We have every other week here. And by the way, this was Christian's idea. This is my first time I've been able to catch you live, and he insisted that we do this tonight.
I'm glad you called. It's my pleasure. I'm delighted to hear your voices. All right, hit me. Let's go.
All right, so this church has grown to be about 15 times as big in the last 10 or 15 years as it was 10 or 15 years ago. And one of the ways they did that, they started off with a skate park and really reaching out. I was involved in a couple of community service groups that were fairly secular at the time, and the church really reached out even to those secular community service groups and partnered up with those and really grew. But the last few years, I'm sure you're familiar with hell houses, the concept of hell houses.
They are the Halloween alternatives where they essentially take you in during the month of October, scare the crap out of you, and then say, this is real, you need to accept Jesus, or you will go to hell. Yes?
Oh, yes, scarier than any haunted house I've ever been in.
I gotta tell you, the last couple of years, this church has done one called Judgment House, and I'm going to let Christian explain to you how they kind of market that to the kids, and I'll let him explain it there, Seth.
So every year, this year not as much. This year they were a bit more upfront about what it really was, but in previous years, they would put up these billboards outside the church, like advertise it as a haunted house alternative. And they would not even talk about the religious aspects of it. They would just sucker in teenagers with this. And a bunch of them came every year. And they went through, and they had a bunch of teenage actors in this thing. And it would be a drama, a walkthrough drama about, there would always be, like, a couple characters. There would be the bad kid who grew up in this terrible secular home and always gets into terrible situations. Then there would be the good person, but they don't believe in Jesus, and they're afraid to make their decision. And then there's the fine, upstanding Christian. And then a couple, sometimes this one's in there, sometimes he's not, or she, is the friend who just that day makes the conversion to, enlightenment.
It follows them right after they all have a terrible accident and die.
One year it was a shooting, one year it was a car accident.
I got to tell you, to add to this, from a father's perspective, Seth, my daughter is quite a bit younger than Christian, and the way they really attract the kids. Now, they don't encourage younger kids to go through it necessarily, the really young ones, but they do encourage them to participate in it. My daughter, they gave her a scene in heaven where she loves to dance, so they put her in a nice little angel costume, and it was the friendly music and the nice friendly stuff, and she got to dance all in the, to show the heaven side of it.
This was about 5 minutes after we just saw two teenagers burning in hell for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
Put things in perspective.
Wow. Were you proud that your little girl was in there at the time, or were you thinking, this is bad mojo? What was going on in your head as a parent?
Well, for me as a dad, I mean, I slowly came to, and I'll get into this maybe sometime in an email. I remember a couple weeks ago you mentioned to somebody just in passing about how everybody always bleeds out their hearts to you. But I won't go into the whole gory details of that. But my coming to atheism, all the way from being a Jehovah's Witness growing up, and I know that religion keeps popping up the last couple of weeks too, I know, it has been long coming, and I've seen it really, it's impacted my family, and since my ex-wife and I, it was probably one of the biggest factors in my filing for divorce, and it still to this day continues to be a struggle because my kids live every other week in a fundamentalist home, and then every other week they live in the home of an atheist. So, it was really tough for me. And the reason I went to go through it is I really wanted to make sure that I was aware of what they were being taught there. So, yeah, I can tell you it's gut-wrenching as a dad. It's tough for me as a dad to try and remain objective and to let the kids come to their own understanding and belief without allowing some of my bitterness to come out. That's been kind of a challenge. So, yeah, it's
your perspective, your situation is not uncommon either. I hear a lot from, I'd say, mixed marriages. But one is a believer, one is not, especially if one started out as a believer and gave up their faith. And now with the kids in play, it's very difficult. You brought up a great with the judgment houses. I'm going to probably have to move on in just a second, but you brought up a great segue. There's a church in Tulsa called Guts Church, and they are an edgier church. They go after young people, and they have what is, to date, probably the best haunted house I've ever been through. It's Universal Studios quality stuff, and they have, I don't know how many people go through every year, but it is their number one biggest attraction. It is known around the nation. The production values are A+ Hollywood. Holy crap, where did they get the money and the resources? The amount of actors and time, they set it up all year for 1 month.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people pay their $10-15 to go through. But at the very end, and it's the same thing. You're walking down in the middle of the haunted house, but it's real world stuff. There's a gang shooting. They push you up against the wall. You see somebody get shot. You witness a girl blowing her brains out in her bedroom. You see people shooting up on the street. You witness a car wreck. The car's flipped over. The wheel is still spinning. There are bloody bodies hanging out. And at the very end, there's Jesus Christ, and he's hanging on the cross. He's whipped all to pieces, and he's dripping blood. And then as soon as you walk out the door of this nightmare or this judgment house, they have counselors waiting then to lead you in the salvation prayer.
Hey, Seth, can I tell you, I know you got other callers here, but I want to tell you what happened the first time I went through it, just real quick.
Please.
The first time I went through it, they had that room. They take you in the room, and they send you through in groups of about 15 at a time, 10 to 15 at a time. And they take you and they put you in this little room. They want you to, they have you bow your head in prayer with your eyes closed and everything. And Christian and I were actually together during that one. We were sitting up front, and he says, okay, anybody that this touched them, that they want to accept Jesus Christ, just lift your hands up, keep your heads bowed, lift your hands up, and somebody will tap you on the shoulder and take you out. So you hear some ruffling, some shuffling around and everything. Then he say, anybody that this reaffirms your faith, that you've already accepted Christ, but you just want to reaffirm it, just lift your hands up, and somebody will tap you on the shoulder and take you out. So that you hear some more shuffling, and I'm waiting for the rest of it, and I'm just still sitting there with Christian, and, my head bowed, eyes closed out of respect, and there's silence, and I open my eyes and look up, and the room's empty. So Christian goes, do we go? And I said, yeah, I guess we do. We just left there.
One thing I want to say is, like, every year, I used to go to the Wednesday night services at the church. And I used to be really into it and really strong in my belief.
This is Christian talking.
Yeah, I was in full support of the whole Judgment House thing. I thought it was a great way to reach other teenagers, looking back on it. But okay.
It's amazing what perspective does. To look through the looking glass the other way, you think, how did I not see what I'm seeing now the first time around? And guys, what would have been awesome? What would have been awesome if we'd have gone through the nightmare, and at the end, we'd have seen all that horrible stuff, and then we would have walked up to Jesus and seen him on the cross and pushed that button, and he'd have been...
There was a young boy nearby with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. It wasn't enough food.
I'm sorry, guys. I gotta put this away. Gotta put this away.
What I was trying to say is that every week after Judgment House, they would have probably 10 or 20 new teenagers that nobody had ever seen before at these Wednesday night services. And probably about half of them would end up staying. Yeah. They would end up coming every week. And this thing, it converted people, and they stayed. And it's just amazing to me how much that Judgment House, how much that marketing ploy changed.
Well, it's a scared straight thing. It's a scared straight deal. They go and rattle your cage.
Thing yet?
The Atheist Teen Show is next Tuesday night.
Next Tuesday night, okay.
Specifically for young people, for teenagers who would like to call. All my callers, all my letters are going to be teen related, okay?
Hey, thanks for your time and everything you do, Seth. I really appreciate it.
Both of you. Kelly, Christian, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much, both of you, for listening.
All right, thanks, Seth.
I brought up Guts Church. I'm not picking on Guts tonight, but it's in my hometown. And there's something that happened last year during a marketing, they wouldn't call it a marketing thing, but you listen to the story and you tell me, okay? The story got worldwide, not world, well, it may have been played internationally, actually. Last September, on September 21st, Guts Church, which is always doing this really edgy, youth-oriented, out-of-the-box type stuff to attract attention, just like the Nightmare, right? They had something called Fight Night, Guts Church Fight Night 6. And they take, I think, are they amateur? Are they semi-pro, MMA fighters, anybody who wants to fight? And they had an outdoor arena kind of built in the church parking lot, as I understand it. And they brought these guys in and they just beat the holy shit out of each other and in the name of Jesus Christ. And it's a big deal. Now, I one of the guys I work with is an MMA fighter. And I have tremendous respect for people who box and who do MMA and all that stuff. Honestly, I used to think growing up I never understood it. And the more I have learned, the more I understand the incredible amount of talent and skill and stamina and strength it takes to be able to do this, okay? But it's also obviously extremely dangerous. And it's weird that a church is using a fight to attract people who are supposed to be turning the other cheek. So they have this event, right? And one of the fighters, his name is George Klingsdale. He used to play for the University of Tulsa. He participated in the fight, and as I understand it, he collapsed at the end of the fight, was carried off, and died. Okay? So it's a church event. They bring this guy out. He participates. He's not a fighter. He's not a I don't know that he had ever boxed before. There was no physician on site. That's a violation of state regulations. It was an unsanctioned event, not sanctioned by the Boxing Commission, which is in violation of state regulations, according to the lawsuit that has been filed. Televised without a license, that's also in violation, according to the lawsuit. The referee was not an approved ref by the Oklahoma Boxing Commission. And as I understand it, Clinksdale did not come forward and say that he had a previous condition. He had sickle cell anemia, which would have been huge. And that exacerbated what essentially caused his death, was the sickle cell. So he is partially at fault, as I understand it, too, for not coming forward at the beginning and saying, I shouldn't be in the ring. He said, screw it, let's go do it. And he paid with his life. His family's taken the church to court. It's just a huge mess. And the whole time, I'm thinking about this big event, this big, hugely attended, controversial, fun, exciting, electric duel going on in the Guts parking lot. I'm thinking, you're using fighting to promote Jesus? And the second thing, and the more important thing for me was, if you believe that God is omnipotent and omniscient and all-knowing and all-loving, how did he allow one of his children to be killed at an event in his name? Now, I use this question every time tragedy happens at a church, and it happens all the time. Pastors gunned down in the pulpit. Lightning strikes, a tornado goes through, and people are killed under a church roof. Something horrible happens. It happened on God's watch in his house. And I haven't heard one person on either side, even in the media, say, what kind of God would sit back and watch this guy freaking die at an event in his honor? I don't buy the his ways are not our ways. Or we have to do the right thing. God's not going to do everything for us. There are consequences to our actions. I'll be curious to see how the lawsuit comes out. It should be interesting. I had a letter from a gentleman. He wanted to remain anonymous. I will call him John. He said, I used to live in Nebraska where the vast majority of people are Christian, much like I'm sure it is for you in Oklahoma. I worked at Walmart there. We would have these little books left on our counters by customers spouting Bible verses and telling us why we need to be saved from eternal damnation. This happened on a regular basis while I worked there. It always kind of put me in a bad mood since we have to be nice to these people. Normally, I'm a nice guy, especially at work. I'm getting paid. But when you come to my place of work, when I work at such a crappy job in the first place, you put trash on my counter that I have to clean up and then tell me my biggest problem in life is that I haven't found Jesus. Well, let's just say that's a great way to get my blood boiling. I would gather up every last book I could find and toss them in the trash and back, where their harmful messages would never reach the eyes of an impressionable person. Another slightly less intrusive ad was on this gigantic billboard with a bizarre message saying that the Sabbath is actually Saturday and that it was changed by the Antichrist. Really? It was up for well over a year. And I'm not sure how much billboards cost, but it was up that long. I can only imagine how many work hours the people of that church had to put in at their jobs to pay for such a ridiculous and meaningless message. Hopefully they know their money's being spent on advertising and not stuff like helping the poor, like Jesus supposedly taught. Dustin wrote in, he said, in John 2:14 and 15, it states, quote, in the temple courts, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables, unquote. Yet we see Christian bookstores everywhere selling their posters, books, CDs, and testaments. And these people think they are simply expanding the kingdom by making a profit and turning some of it over to what they consider to be a good cause. Like more Christian marketing, it's a circular machine. These people are completely ignorant to the idea of Jesus getting angry for using the kingdom as a profit generator. Again, if people would read their Bibles, they would be able to see the ridiculousness contained within. Marketing, money, is simply another place where the Bible is inherently contradictory. Luke 6:38 says, "Give, and it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap, for with the measure you use it will be measured back to you." But then the infallible, quote-unquote, infallible Bible turns around and says it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God in Mark 10:25. I've had this argument with Christians. The apologists will say, oh, it doesn't mean rich, it means selfish. But there's not a single translation of the Bible where this is the case. Once again, the Bible's left open to interpretations by humans who are simply ants in the face of a genius God. This just further proves that one of the following must be true. One, the perfect, all-knowing, all-seeing God in all of his wisdom decided the best way to communicate with his creation was through a book filled with contradictions, half-truths, flat-out lies, parables that may or may not be literal, instructions on the most basic of principles in the Bibles, both contradict and are open to interpretation by stupid humans who could never know his true will in the first place because, don't you know, God works in mysterious ways. Or two, there really is no God. The book was made up by humans, and the evidence for it is right there on your bookshelf. It is called the Bible. I don't want to detract too much from our marketing of church theme, but I do want to address something. Many people will quote the scripture, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God," Mark 10:25. And of course, your first inclination is to say, well, that's impossible, so nobody rich will go to heaven. But as I understand it, the translation, indigenous to the time and context, the eye of the needle was a place where camels would enter into the city through the city wall separately than the foot traffic of the people. The eye of the needle was just what they called a different place for the animals to come in. And it was very narrow, and it was very difficult for the camel to get through. But it was possible. That is the context in which we were taught that particular scripture, and I would welcome a historian to go and follow up and elaborate on this. And it is, there's a weird duality. Part of them, some churches say, you are destined to be prosperous. God wants you to have everything that you want and need. God wants you to be financially prosperous. And others say, give everything away. Don't love money. Don't love stuff. Don't love materials. Be poor. Be rich in spirit. It's a very, very difficult thing to get around, this paradox. 828, thanks for your patience on hold. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast.
Hello?
Who's this?
This is Jessica from Swannanoa, North Carolina, near Asheville.
Glad you're calling, Jessica. What's going on?
I was raised in a lot of ways y'all are talking about the show. Not only did we have beach trips where we would witness to kids and try to get them saved, but we had an Awana program.
Turn your radio down for me just a little bit, Sugar, would you?
Can you turn that down?
Yeah, turn it off.
Okay.
There you go.
Sorry.
No, you're doing good. So what was your tactic? Did you give out literature? Did you just accost people on the street? Or what would you guys do?
We would go to Myrtle Beach at Lakewood Campground, and we would go through the streets of the campground and get kids to come and then try to get them saved. You know.
And were you scared? Were you nervous? Were you excited? What was going on?
At the time, I was excited because I wasn't an atheist yet. I was very excited for the children at the time.
But you guys were overt. You were on the offense. You were going out. You were fishers of men and women and children, and you were going out to bring people into the fold, yes?
Yeah. But not only did we have that, but back home we had this program called the Awana program. And the more verses you memorized and the more sections you memorized, you'd get these shares. They were fake dollars. And
what did you do with the fake money?
You'd go to the little store and get little trinkets.
It's like playing skee ball, and those little tickets come out of the bottom,
Chuck E.
and then you
Cheese
go
for
and cash them in. Were you genuinely excited when you got your fake money? You were like, I got $500.
Yeah, it was very exciting. But then in the last couple years, you know, my husband's an atheist, and we've been watching your show and a lot of the other shows that are on the internet about it, and I just came around to think I was a crazy kid.
How are you then? So you're a recent deconvert, or are you still thinking about it? Where are you at?
I am a recent deconvert.
And how's that going for you?
I have not told my family. It's kind of just something me and my husband will talk about personally, because I haven't been able to go to my family with it. Because if I did, I'd get lectured and told I was going to hell and stuff like that.
I totally understand. The only encouragement I can really give you is when the time comes to tell them or not tell them, just make sure it's on your timing and not somebody else's. Don't let anybody push you. Everybody's situation is different. It took me years to get there. So you and your hubby do what's best for you. I'm honestly delighted that you know, you have found a way to be comfortable in your own skin, and just understand that even though it's not easy personally, there are thousands of people who get it and who get you and who understand. And it's a freeing, kind of a liberating feeling to be able to see religion from the other side of the wall, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Very much so.
Jessica, thanks for the call, and say hi to your hubby, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Very difficult. How do I tell my family? They're going to freak out. It's going to affect everything. How are we going to get through the holidays? What about my kids? Are they going to go after my kids? Are they going to stop talking to me? Will they not stop talking? Will they call all the time? What are they going to tell everybody else in the family? Is it going to be a problem? Will it affect my relationship at its core? Will it end my relationship? These are the questions that people like Jessica have to ask and get answers to every single day. And I totally feel it. I feel you. Take your time. Take your time, right? We're playing chess, not checkers. 484, thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, can you hear me?
I sure can. What's your name?
Hi, this is Richard.
Richard, what do you have for us?
I actually have a story about, I was over at my bus station going to my school, and I was sitting down reading my book while I saw two people. One is a Jehovah's Witness, and one was one of those people that were handing out those pamphlets about, like, if you don't believe in God, you're going to hell. And what happened was that I was reading my book, and I kept looking over at those two people, and the one person that was handing out the flyers was saying, don't go to the Jehovah's Witness. That person is going to lead you astray. So I told that person, how do you know that you're right and she's wrong? And then we basically got into an argument about that.
So he was saying, don't go and listen to their doctrine because he's deceived. You must believe mine instead.
Yeah. And we basically got into a major argument when there was another woman that was sitting somewhere around the area, and she was a Muslim, and he was saying, well, I don't have anything against her, but I have something against her faith. And I say, how do you know her faith's not right? And he got into a circular argument about how his faith was right and everybody else's faith was wrong.
What I normally do in that circumstance is I ask him two questions. I say, Where were you born? What was the religion of your parents?
I think
Turn your radio down for me.
That.
Turn your radio down for me.
Okay.
Okay. Well, normally if you ask that question, they'll never say they came to their particular religion because of where they were born or what the religion of their parents was. They'll say, I came to it organically. It was spontaneous. But honestly, it's normally not the case. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it very much.
All right. Yeah.
That sounds like a joke, doesn't it? A Christian, a Jehovah's Witness, and a Muslim walk into a bar. Somebody make up the punchline, would you? 937. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Devin.
Devin, thanks for calling. What's going on?
First, I'd like to say just thanks for your podcast because it's pretty much the reason I question my religion. So,
thanks for listening. It means nothing if nobody's on the other end of the radio. It's a tremendous privilege to me. Thank you so much for listening. What's going on?
Well, and I was just thinking, like, the marketing thing. Like, I hear all these youth group things and, like, big concerts and all that. But, like, my church was this little church with metal folding chairs and folding tables and Velcro Bible stories. And they were focused on little kids. Like, okay, like right now, they go to this elementary school at, like, latchkey after class when little kids can't go home yet. And they don't really ask the kids. They just preach and say, oh, that's wrong, here's the Bible, that's wrong. It's true, and that's all. Like, they don't ask or anything, and it drives me nuts.
And it's to see those wide eyes, those fresh, naive faces looking up. Yeah, and they're carving that religious message right into their soft skulls. It's very difficult,
Yeah, and just based on church attendance where I went, 90% of the congregation was over 50, and the rest was under 13. There were 3 teenagers in the youth group, and now there's 2 because I'm not there. So.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, half of me thinks, oh, that's wrong that they're doing that to those little kids, and the other half of me is like, oh, cool, the church might actually die out, even though that I feel kind of bad for thinking that, but.
Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for calling. Anything else before I move on?
Nope.
All right. Thanks again for the call.
Yep.
You want to some experience on how churches are developing environments for kids. I'm trying to think of the website. I want to say it's called Wacky World. And they develop these environments. They're amazing, too. I mean, they're just amazing for young people. And there's characters and there's murals. They've got these big, multicolored jungle themes or cartoon themes that it's like transporting a child into another world. Of course, kids are going to want to go there. You can go in and you get to sing songs and play games and have fun. And underneath it all is this, underneath all this slick packaging is Jesus died for your sins. You want to go to heaven, don't you? Yes. You don't want to go to hell, do you? No. Well, join me in this prayer. Indoctrination. Back to the phones. 337, thanks for your patience on hold. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, this is Ron. I just wanted to give a short example of my experience because I think that the campus ministry approach is kind of good sometimes. I mean, they're targeting people that are young adults. I think it's very different than childhood indoctrination. Even though there's no way they'd ever convince me. But sometimes they're very straightforward and they have the free meal with the message. And what happens is you go and you get a meal and you get a message over in 45 minutes. It's not like a trick. But they're kind of...
It's not a trick? There's a church here in town. They have a homeless ministry. They take buses and they scoot all around the center of the city. They go out as far as they can. They bring people in who have no jobs, no means, maybe no home, certainly no vehicle. They bring them in. They feed them a meal. And at the end of the meal, they are then required to sit there for an hour-long sermon including a salvation message before they plop them back on the bus and take them and cart them back home. I'm glad they're feeding them. Okay, I'm glad they're meeting a physical need, but doesn't this seem extremely disingenuous to you?
Well, that definitely does. It's like, hey, I hope you enjoyed the meal. By the way, the doors are locked right now, and we're going to talk to you about Jesus. Yeah, that's just not how it's operated. Now, I don't know how some of the other ones are. I've heard they're kind of pushy at other places, but the Cal I go to, I mean, every day it's the same thing. There's different food each time, but they say you get a meal and a message, you eat the meal, they play this like game show type thing, and then there's a message, and it's always out by 45 minutes. I mean, you know, if we want to accept that people are allowed to spread their religious ideas, which I think, you know, freedom of speech, that's okay. I mean, I think that going to young adults who are being exposed to a whole lot of ideas is probably the legitimate way of doing it, not when you contrast that with, you know, indoctrinating children. Now, of course, these people probably would be very happy to do that as well, but I mean, I just think if you're going to spread your ideas, that's the way that you should do it. Although I definitely disagree if you're going to, you know.
I'm starving and homeless, and you offer me a meal, I'll be there.
Yeah, that's different. I mean, homeless people, I think it's very different.
And if you're going to instruct young people about religion, why must you do it in such a subjective environment where they posit it as the truth, the way, the life? Why not teach it to them as, here's what Christianity is, here's what Christians believe, and then also teach them, here's what Catholicism is, here's what Catholics believe, here's what Islam is, here's what Muslims believe. That's not what happens. They bring them in and they crank up the music, right? And they tell them Bible stories, and they posit them as fact, as historical fact, as truth, as moral truth, spiritual truth, eternal truth, and then they hold an altar call and bring these people forward. I can't support that, even if they're feeding people's faces. I just can't get behind it.
Are you talking about kids or homeless people, or just like
I'm talking about from the womb to the tomb, anybody. You bring any human being in under the pretext of, we're going to feed you some delicious food. Now sit in this chair and let us tell you the good news. And that good news is a story that says if you don't buy it, you will fry in the skillet of Beelzebub for all eternity. I have a real problem with that. I think if you're going to teach them about religion, allow them to make decisions about their worldview, you've got to teach them in a more objective classroom. Fair enough?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. In fact, when they're really deceptive about it and they're like, no, it's just going to be fun, there's games, and then you wind up being set down for hours and taught about hell. I mean, that disgusts me as well. I mean, it's more like just an exception to me. But I'm sorry, I'll let you get back. And I love the show. I'll listen to all the podcasts. I've been a big fan for ages, so thanks a lot.
Thank you. I'll keep doing it as long as people keep listening. So thank you so much for being on the other end. Very much appreciated.
All right, thank you.
What would happen if there was somebody who actually worked in a church marketing or media department who became an atheist? Well, apparently it has happened. And this person wrote me a letter for this show. Signed the name Anonymous Graphic Designer. I don't know if I should call you a he or a she. I'm going to go with he if I need a pronoun. Forgive me if I get this wrong. The email says this. First of all, I want to thank you for what you do. I stumbled across your podcast during a time when I struggled to come out of the Christian faith, and your openness to discussion was a great source of comfort and insight for me. Unfortunately, I won't be able to tune in during your show this week, but I wanted to share some thoughts on the topic. I've changed some minor details just in case someone tries to incriminate me. I work as the in-house graphic designer for a church in the New England area, in a small state where most people are either very liberal or belong to smaller traditional parishes. The church I work at is unusual for its uncommonly large attendance, a congregation of 2,000 members. In the past 2 years, it has gone from one central location to 3 total campuses, with the one original site and 2 satellite locations in nearby regions. Now they plan to open 2 more campuses by the end of this year. and aim to have a total of 10 churches in the next 2 to 5 years. Since my job directly pertains to affecting the church's public image, I've gotten to witness the methods and attitudes that make it happen. I'll try to keep my thoughts brief, though I'd love to talk at length about this as a secret atheist designer. In the past 2 years of working here, we've gone through multiple ad campaigns, fundraising, rebranding, website redesigns, live events, campus expansions, and all sorts of other initiatives to either bring in non-believers or engage the congregation. This involves numerous print or web ads with snappy mottos, consulting for branding strategy, creating weekly and monthly newsletters, putting together gift items for newcomers, nice furniture, art shows, professional sound systems, stages and lighting, landscaping, and beautifying the property. The goal is to invite people in and have them stay. Sometimes it doesn't involve money at all. They just constantly ask the congregation to pray, participate, or give. Church marketing is heavily rooted in visuals. Over the years, I've found that the typical look of churches is the, quote, hands clasped, light on the cross, blue-eyed Jesus kneeling in prayer thing, unquote. But contemporary churches such as this one also swing in the other direction with the edgy, cool Christian 2.0 grunge feel. It says something to me about how churches do try to appeal to all markets and are often unsuccessful. So a lot of what I do here is fabricate graphics tailored to all demographics. In a lot of cases, this involves de-Christianizing them, so they either look culturally hip or deceptively non-religious. While this is par for the course in the marketing and advertising industry, it also smacks of deception and subliminal influence. Marketing is all about persuasion. Not for exclusively bad motivations either, but religious marketing in particular is wrapped up in flowery, biblical rhetoric, which I'm sure you are familiar with. Masking the bottom line, which is that churches like this are run as businesses. The bigger the church gets, the more money it needs to survive. Our senior pastor has no reservations when he lectures the staff to meet the giving quota each week. That he has us pray for people to give more to further God's righteous kingdom, a God which, by the way, we all theologically agree does not need people's money. Trying not to openly facepalm when I hear things like this is very challenging. I have a lot of thoughts on this subject, but I'll just say this for now. Marketing and religion are not inherently evil in my book. The old marketing standby that we're just giving people what they want has some validity, though it can be a poor defense. Many people's lives are drastically changed for the better because of what religion can offer, and churches would not be able to get this message out if they weren't able to properly communicate them. Good strategy and planning is important and prudent for any organization. The part which makes me uncomfortable is the pious facade. I don't feel that it's unethical to ask for what is needed or wanted, but hiding or softening the blows of their elaborate strategies with God's supposed will seems dishonest. Where this leaves the discussion, I'm not sure, but I just wanted to contribute my thoughts as an insider. Thanks for all you do and for reading my message, the anonymous graphic designer. P.S. Another thing I wanted to mention. New converts here are referred to as new flowers, which staff is always ecstatic with glee when they are reported, not unlike making a sale or the signing of a big client. We have a new flower. I picture all these little hippies, going, we have a new flower among us, everybody. Bring out the crystals. Somebody light the incense. Whew. Wow. Well, it's something we should certainly be cognizant of. And she is absolutely right. I don't have a problem with marketing. Trust me, I come from media. I'm all about delivering the message with excellence. I think it is important. Geez, half of the things I do on my page, I do to make it accessible so that people will enjoy being there. I get that. Want it to be easy to navigate and fun to use. I want people to have a positive experience and come back. I get that. You run an ad campaign for a freaking soft drink. People enjoy the drink. They go out and buy it. Fantastic. I'm all about that. I have no problem at all with it. Religion is a different animal because they are selling the fantasy of an invisible eye in the sky and a book written by primitives vomiting in the face of science and reason and common sense, quelling curiosity and teaching fear to young people. They have to be stopped. It doesn't mean we hate the people who implement these campaigns. It means we understand, as Jerry DeWitt said so well, we understand that you are sincere, but you are sincerely wrong. And we are holding up a voice and a hand of opposition to say, we cannot let this continue. This isn't just about marketing a movie you're going to go take the family to on Friday night and go have a good time. This is about selling life or death, changing entire life courses, and how you approach the world, how you vote, how you train up your children, how you influence our political systems, how you influence our educational textbooks, how you treat people. This is a different deal, and it has to be addressed. Our next show is about young people, specifically a show where atheist young people, agnostic young people, and maybe those on the fence have a voice. They feel like no one's listening to them? That's not true. We will be listening to you next Tuesday night on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful week.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.